Yes, that's right. It's The Squeeze. It's episode 12, and it's presented by Primetime Sports Talk. My name is Logan Lockhart. That right there is Tyler Milliken. We are back, a post-holiday show leading into the All-Star break, leading into the MLB draft. It's usually in June, but now, after 4th of July, we can say the draft is coming up. How about that, Tyler? How you doing? We're back.
We're back. It's been 2 weeks now off vacation. It was a beautiful time. I had beautiful weather down the Cape. Unfortunately, I've been back 4 or 5 days now, so I've lost my tan a little bit. I look as pale as I usually do, but I promise I was on the beach. I got sunburned really bad the first couple early days, so I can't complain. I'm feeling relaxed, chilled, reset, ready for a crazy couple weeks of baseball stuff between the All-Star game, the games we do have going on, futures game, draft. We got everything.
And it only rained once when you were down there. And it seems like in baseball, there's a rain out every day. So we're playing double headers all the time. I think the Mets have played in like 8 double headers.
Every time you turn on, quick pitch in the morning for MLB Network, you're watching doubleheader after doubleheader. And it's weird. They obviously had a lot of the early season hiccups too with their schedule and everything. So, yeah, we were fortunate. One day of rain, and when you're down the Cape, rain really slows down everything. So I can't complain, especially because I've had some years down there where it's downpoured.
Of course, there was no All-Star game in 2020. The last time we've seen an All-Star game was in 2019, which is why I think a lot of people are excited for 2021 because we haven't seen it in 2 years. Your reaction to the All-Star game rosters on both sides, the American League and the National League?
Overall, every year, listen, people are going to have snubs. It's just part of it, especially the way they pick it. If you're not really an elite closer, you're not going to make it as a reliever, for example. You know what I mean? But there were your typical snubs. I just think this year with the All-Star game and everything going on, like you said, it's been a while since we've had one of these. And it's a place where baseball as a whole can kind of unite. For the first time, since all this stuff happened, you'll have fans from all across the sport who each have something invested in it. We saw the World Series last year, but listen, Rays, Dodgers. This is something everybody has a player. Everybody has some kind of piece in it. And you can even look at it in terms of the home run derby and the futures game and all these different events, the draft. It's a baseball fan's dream. And I'm looking at this All-Star game. Listen, the Red Sox leading the way in terms of All-Star or guys making the All-Star team, which is very cool. Speaks to everything going on with them right now. But I kind of went ahead and I had a couple snubs or I had a snub and I had a couple guys that I thought were going to stick out for them. And I don't know. You want to kind of go down the list?
Let's go down the list here. Now, you mentioned snubs right away. So clearly there's at least a few players on your mind that you believe should be in Denver. Is there one in particular that really irks you that isn't going to Colorado?
Yes, I got to go on Garrett Whitlock here. I think he's been arguably the least talked about kind of piece in the snub list. You don't see him showing up a ton, but this is a guy who's pitched 42 innings out of the pen this year. It's a 150 ERA, 308 FIP, 9.9 K per nine, 2.4 walk per nine. His ERA plus is 312. Jacob deGrom's is 358, and that's an all-time historic mark. Pedro's 2000 season was 291. So this is Garrett Whitlock. He's pitching out of his mind. And he's kind of pitched in different situations, whether it's been early innings, a little bit not mop-up duty, but bridging a poor start from someone. And now Cora's using him later in games too. I think he's someone, especially considering his story and where he came from, he's everything you kind of want to see in an All-Star game. He's going to be one of the bright future arms, at least in the AL East.
So Matt Barnes is on the All-Star roster. And as of late, there's been a little bit of nervous moments when Barnes comes into the game. So do you think that Whitlock should be there instead of Barnes? Like, let's lay it out. Because when I look at snubs, I'm thinking, okay, we can't just pick good players. We've got to look at who actually made the team and say he shouldn't be there, but he should. Do you think it should be Whitlock for Barnes?
No, I can't take it away from Barnes simply for the closing side of things. But you go down that Red Sox bullpen, another name, Josh Taylor, who's about to break the all-time scoreless appearance record for the Red Sox. Nobody's talking about Josh Taylor. You know what I mean? There's so many guys you go and look at the Red Sox roster right now that you can make some kind of case for. But it is what it is. You're going to find those snubs year in and year out. Overall, they did a good job. Yeah, I don't know. I look at Garrett Whitlock. He's going to have plenty of opportunities too. And he said that. A guy like Matt Barnes, it's his first shot. Nate Eovaldi's also in that same spot. Go for it. Matt, and even with the recent shaky appearances, Barnes' stats are as good as just about any closer in the league right now.
Quickly to the National League, I was surprised that Max Scherzer was not an All-Star. And I know he's been injured, And I think that has a lot to do with it. I know people say, why didn't he make the All-Star game? Well, he only played 20 games, right? So we can't really qualify him as an All-Star. Max Scherzer was putting together one of his best years. And I was surprised because we know how the voting works. It's kind of a popularity contest. And you would think Max Scherzer, where he is in his career, he would get the votes. And I think that's a snub right there.
I agree. He's one of the main, faces of pitching in baseball. He's on the veteran side, and we know he's, getting older and older, but he's still Max Scherzer. And last year we saw some of the hiccups. People thought he was regressing. He's shown this year that just isn't the case, and especially for a Nationals team that has been pretty streaky from start to finish. Another name I throw in, Taijuan Walker, who's been absolutely ridiculous for the Mets. And we know right now with Jacob deGrom, obviously he did make the team, but he's not going. All his teammates are kind of pushing and saying, listen, Taijuan Walker should have been there already. Get him in there now. And I can't blame them. He's right at the, top of the ERA leaderboards for the NL. And if he didn't have the greatest pitcher on the world in front of him, people would probably be talking about him a lot more.
It's crazy how there were almost no teams interested in Taijuan Walker during the offseason. He got traded to Toronto at last year's trade deadline, and it was kind of a forgotten asset in this league from a pitching perspective. And the Mets pick him up, take a flyer, and it's worked out.
Yeah, from your perspective, Logan, as someone who watches a lot of Blue Jays baseball and saw him, did you see this kind of elevation for him coming? Because I didn't. Even some of the advanced metrics last year with the Blue Jays showed that he wasn't as good as a lot of people thought he was. And now the metrics are pointing to it. And obviously his ERA and everything is too.
I did not see it at all. And I had no problem not re-signing him from a Blue Jays perspective. It wasn't something that people were really talking about, right? There were a lot of pitchers on the roster last year that weren't brought back, but one in particular was Robbie Ray, who was also brought in at the trade deadline. He was the guy that the team decided to re-sign. It wasn't Taijuan Walker. It wasn't Chase Anderson, right? It was Robbie Ray. So it was kind of forgotten altogether, and it shows because no other team was interested in him other than the Mets. So it's quite remarkable of Taijuan Walker. Jacob deGrom, like you mentioned, we'll get to whether we have a problem with him not playing in the All-Star game. He is on the roster. He's just not playing. I want to go to Yuli Gurriel. I think this is a snub in the AL. He's not your typical first baseman slugging guy, but you know what? Maybe that's why he didn't make it, right? I mean, he does everything else great, right? He's going to hit for an average. He's going to hit on base. He's going to do everything that you need. He plays pretty good first base. He's just not that slugger, right? There's a lot of other Astros that are considered with that slugger bill, not Gurriel. I think it's a snub.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I think it's just unfortunate. You look who made it over him, Matt Olson, one of those guys. And Matt Olson's just having such a ridiculous year. And, you look at Yuli Gurriel and you're like, wow, obviously he's playing way above his head we've seen over the years. But Matt Olson, it's like a 160 OPS plus. Like, it's ridiculous. I think it's just bad luck on his part. But like we said, you go down these lists, there's some guys having great years that won't be here. And it sucks. That's one of the hard parts about the All-Star game and the way it works. And I wish there was a way for him to get recognized because, this is probably going to turn out to be the best year of his career. And another guy I throw from that Astros team, Yordan Alvarez. And coming from a Red Sox guy, I think he should have made the team over JD Martinez. He's done more damage. The OPS plus is higher than JD Martinez, and he's done it in even less games. So that's another kind of guy who, look, fan voting is part of it, but there's so many great candidates here. Some people are bound to get a little screwed.
And Alvarez has been really hot as of late, by the way. I mean, he did go through a bit of a cold stretch. Not anymore. He's turned it around in a big way, and he's carrying the lineup. He's driving in so many runs, and that's a scary proposition for the rest of the American League.
I think he's the most underrated young bat in all of baseball, and I think people forgot about it a little bit with his injuries and the knee problems he's had, but this is a guy who's going to dominate baseball as a DH for the foreseeable future, and it wouldn't shock me at some point if we look at him in the same tier as, Vlad Guerrero Jr. In that kind of space, because I believe the bat is that good. But going back, Logan, I'm curious. The All-Star game, everything going on. What is your prediction? Who do you think turns out to be the All-Star game MVP? And who wins?
MVP, you know what? I'm going to double down on the whole weekend, whatever we call it in Major League Baseball, the couple days. I'm going to double down. Shohei Ohtani will win the Derby. And then how about we double down on it and say he'll win the MVP during the game?
I respect it. I respect the boldness. Listen, with Otani, it wouldn't shock me one bit. That feels like it fits every storyline of where this year is going. Modern day Babe Ruth, the guy we refer to as a baseball god now, goes and just dominates the weekend. Would not shock me one bit. On my side, I'm going to go a little bit different. I think Rafael Devers ends up being the AL MVP as they take the game. I think he's another one of those guys like Yordan Alvarez. Just he doesn't get grouped in with those other young superstars, the Tatis, the Juan Sotos. And Devers is having a huge breakout party this year. I was looking at Jason Stark's AL MVP midseason marks. He has Rafael Devers as the third in the MVP voting, or how he lists it down. I think he's going to put on a show and remind people why you should put some respect on his name. And then on the other end, the home run derby, Joey Gallo. I'm looking at Colorado. You got that shorter porch in right field. And listen, there's not many guys, or really any guy you can say has more power than Joey Gallo. I think he's going to put on an all-time show. I think it's going to be Josh Hamilton, Vlad Guerrero Jr. type of show. Doesn't mean he ends up winning it out. Who knows, right? But I think you'll see at least one round from him where he makes everyone say, wow. And it's, the number one thing everyone's talking about on Twitter for a night.
It's funny, a couple weeks ago, we did our dream home run derby lineups, and you were very enthusiastic about having Joey Gallo in the derby. And now when I heard that he actually will be in the derby, I said, wow, you know what? Yeah, you're going to be excited. He's going to put on a show. How about a final if it's like Gallo and Otani? I mean, come on.
Ooh.
I mean, that's got to be something right there.
Those lefty swings.
Lefty swings. Yeah, and Gallo's been on a tear as of late. I was getting a little worried about him earlier in the season because he did change his approach a bit. He was drawing a lot of walks, which he has in the past. He's a power bat. He's going to get pitched around. But he was really a kind of guy that was like, he's hitting more singles now. And the home run numbers are down. Is he a different hitter? Well, you know what? He's kind of like went back to good old Joey Gallo now through late May, June, July. This is what it's been for Gallo.
Yeah, he's found the power stroke again, which is nice to see. And I give him a lot of credit. He's made a lot of comments, it feels like, the last few weeks to be like, listen, just because I think the batting average is like 239 right now, 240. He's like, that's not what defines a guy anymore in baseball. It's not just, if you're hitting 280, you're a good player. You're hitting 220, you're not. No, he plays great defense. We know what he brings. We know what the power is, his ability to get on base. And the weighted runs created plus proves it. The OPS plus does, those marks that show how impactful a hitter is, the worth he has. And I like seeing him shine in these spots because it points to what the future of baseball is, moving past the traditional mindset and seeing what his skill set can really do for a team.
Will he be a Texas Ranger a week after that home run derby? I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a conversation we're definitely going to have. I think that, at the end of the day, it's almost the same conversation now. We're going through the same dance. Will he be traded? Will he not? It's got to be a headache for Joey Gallo.
Yeah, it's hard for that Rangers franchise, too, that really doesn't have a face of the franchise outside of him. And obviously, they've had some guys who are, putting it together right now. Obviously, Kyle Gibson's having an unreal year for them. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa has been great for them. But Joey Gallo, at this point, is the face of that franchise. And for better or for worse, obviously, some people feel like he hasn't lived up to what they had hoped, but for a Rangers franchise that hasn't had much going on for years, it's really been only Joey Gallo. But looking at that all-star team, one last thing, Logan, is there anyone you looked at who, you pounding the fist on the table, he should be starting over somebody else? Because I have Cedric Mullins in that spot. I think everybody's in that position. He's just been overall one of the best all-arounds, if not the best all-around player this year. The guy's 6th in B-WAR, 7th in batting average, 5th in hits, 9th in doubles, 6th in total bases, 8th in stolen bases, 8th in OPS plus, and 4th in runs created. And he's doing this on a hopeless Orioles team. I feel so bad. I feel so bad for him.
Usually when we think of these players, we kind of think of different guys here and there. You say one, I say one. I'm on the same page with you of Cedric Mullins. I thought that Teoscar Hernandez starting, I thought it was borderline. And I would have put Cedric Mullins in the outfield starting in the game for the American League. That's just my stance on it. You got 3 Blue Jays in the starting lineup. I mean, what are they? The 27 Yankees all of a sudden? I mean, come on. You got to put Cedric Mullins in there. That's just my opinion on it, And Teoscar's been hurt a little bit this year. It's not like he's played every game. He's been really good. But I thought Cedric Mullins deserved this shout-out here. He's the ultimate breakout player for 2021.
Yeah, and his story of giving up on switch hitting and kind of just
Yeah.
changing everything up, it's what baseball is all about. He was never a top prospect or someone people looked at and thought, this guy would even be a big league player for more than a couple of years on, an Orioles team that was letting double A guys basically go out there to just fill the roster and play games. No, he's developed into one of the better players in baseball. And for the Orioles, they're in a weird spot where they don't have a lot going for them as a whole, and it feels like he's been one of those few bright spots alongside, a Trey Mancini and a Ryan Mountcastle.
I love myself a good leadoff hitter that can just do everything.
He's old school.
He is. He is. And when you watch Orioles games, you know what you're going to get with Cedric Mullins at this point. We've seen enough, right? It's not the beginning of May anymore. We know what we're getting of Cedric Mullins, and it's so fun to watch.
No, he tortured the first weekend when the Red Sox got swept. That was torture watching what he did to them. It all started there, and he hasn't stopped even as the Orioles have fallen and really, aren't playing great baseball. He's just been constant. He's continued to push them and praise, the young guys on the team and that are coming together. And I give credit to the Orioles. While the team isn't there, they've built some really, a nice foundation of clubhouse guys and players that at least can help coach that next generation and get that next core together. And, Trey Mancini alongside him. You need guys like that if you hope to get through a hard rebuild.
So the Angels are an interesting team, and they just finished the series with the Red Sox, and we saw Shohei Ohtani start on the mound. You must have been quite excited for that. Facing the Red Sox, you get to see Ohtani, and it was looking good for the Red Sox early on in that game, a sac fly, and you're thinking, hold on for a second, Ohtani is just coming off his worst start of the year at Yankee Stadium. Maybe we can cook up something against them, but he pitched very well against the Red Sox.
Yeah, he's been way better at home than he has been on the road this year. We've seen that. Obviously, the Yankees, a prior start showed all of that. But just getting to watch him 3 days in a row, we all see, we're checking in the games and watching. But, you're tuning in for an at-bat or a start to just watch him start, then go in and out of the lineup and do his thing and just play on a day-to-day basis. It's crazy. Just the constant way he makes you just say, wow, whether it was the speed on the base pass, the 7 innings he threw, giving up 2 earned runs, which is a little bit misleading at the same time because Xander Bogaerts got robbed of a 2-run home run from Juan Lagares. What are the chances? We all know what Juan Lagares can do with the glove, but come on, man. What are we talking here? 2015? Like, we're really doing this right now? But yeah, Shohei Ohtani, he's everything is advertised, from the on-field product, from the, when he, at one point, Christian Arroyo, while he was pitching, split his bat at the end of an inning. He walks over, picks up the broken bat, and brings it over to Christian Arroyo. Like, this guy is everything you could want the face of baseball to be. He's gracious, he's nice, he's funny, and he's the craziest thing we've seen since Babe Ruth on a baseball field. The power, he had a home run. He went 4 for 13, added a double on that as well. It was the whole package. And Christian Arroyo, the last game of the series, said it best. He's a freak, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. There's no other way to put it. And you're seeing with Ohtani, he didn't walk anyone in that start against the Red Sox. It feels like he's learned to give up a little bit of the velocity for more feel, and to think that there's another gear that he could possibly find on the mound. I don't even know what to say. It's terrifying to think about, but so cool at the same time.
Well, that's the thing, right? He's kind of tuned it back a bit in terms of velocity, and he didn't walk anyone. We've seen times when he's a bit of a wild guy out there, and you think back to his first start of the year. It was against the White Sox, and he's pumping 101, right? And all this, and we're thinking, wow, we got ourselves like a mini DeGrom here who's going to hit. It can't always be like that, and I think we're all starting to come to that reality. It's cool to see him throw 101, but at the end of the day, him having a little more control and him feeling that zone and really controlling his pitches, I think that's a lot better for Ohtani.
100%. And you're seeing him start to feature that curveball a lot more. And it was almost a very Garrett Richards-esque new curveball. And Alex Cora kind of talked about it. And listen, Garrett Richards is throwing these 70 mile per hour, high 60 curveballs that just drop in. And Ohtani dropped a couple, and you're like, wow, he's still reinventing himself. He's still trying different things here. And that's what makes me look at him. You're already the craziest thing baseball has seen, and you're still trying to get better. Wow. One thing I wanted to ask you, Logan, I don't know, did you see Brian Kenny's comments about Ohtani? That viral clip?
Recent comments from Brian Kenny?
Yeah. So Brian Kenny came out and said he believes at this point Ohtani should be switched to solely a hitter. And this year has shown that. And the outrage was ridiculous.
Yeah.
His claim was, he's so great at hitting right now. We already see everything he's doing. he could be even better if he stepped away from the mound. Is that crazy? How do you feel?
Well, you know what? First of all, I think it's a valid opinion. I don't think it's that crazy. I know everyone's loving this whole story. He's doing both at a very high level. He is hitting better than he is pitching, though. And when he first came from Japan, we thought it would be the other way around. We thought he's going to be a really good pitcher. Could be an ace caliber guy, and he'll have a bat to go along with it. It's gone reverse. When you're leading the league in home runs, when you're doing things at the bat in terms of what StatCast would love, you're really going into territory where I think, look, I've heard the idea where they say make him a closer, and you can kind of go in that direction. I don't know. You know what I want to see? I want to see if the Angels are really competitive in like September, if they get to the postseason. How do you use Ohtani now? You're trying to win ball games here. How do you use him if he starts a game and you got to take him out? This is the postseason, remember, and you got to take him out in the third inning. You can't lose his bat. So how do you deal with that? And Joe Maddon's got to think of something. So maybe Brian Kenny's kind of thinking ahead here, saying, look, if this team's in a must-win scenario, what do you do with Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, listen, while I don't agree with what he said, I understand where he was coming from. Because you're talking about he's this good while pitching and having his mind on other things. Could he be the best hitter in baseball if he just focused solely on hitting? And that's a fair thing. We had this conversation with Mike Trout. Mike Trout is so great with the bat that it outdid everything anybody else could do. Could he reach those heights? I don't think the pure hit tool is as strong as Mike Trout. Well, I think the power is as great as you're going to see. I think no matter what with Ohtani, until he shows you he can't do this, and the fact that he's getting better tells me what I need to see. If he starts regressing and he turns into, a 4.25 ERA kind of pitcher, I'm fine. I get it. Then I'd be like, all right, what does a 4 or 5 starter mean to me in that light? But he's pitching like a number 2. And if he keeps trending in that direction, I see what Brian Kenny's trying to do. I see what's the gears rolling in his head. I just don't agree with that end. With the way things are going, it doesn't look like it's going in that direction. But could he do this for 5 more years? Even me, as big of a fan of Ohtani, my brain can't compute that.
We have to see it to believe it, right? We can make all the projections we want, but I think you just hit the nail on the head. Once he goes a level down from a number 3 starter, then, okay, let's have the conversation. But if he's a 1 or 2, hey, he's got to pitch. He's got to pitch.
Especially for an Angels team that they can't get pitching for the life of them. They got Dylan Bundy in the bullpen now, like pure disaster.
Yeah, and I see Quintana's sometimes in the bullpen. I don't know what's going on. They got to do something at the deadline. And I know they're like 9.5 games back of something of first place, but they still have to be buyers because you expect Trout to be back. You're having an MVP caliber season from Ohtani. You got to still commit and try to buy.
Yeah, and they just got back over 500. They're a couple games over now. You took 2 out of 3 from the Red Sox, who some see as the best team in the AL at this point. Yeah, and like you said, you got Mike Trout coming back. They've played above 500 ball without him, which is even crazier when you think about it. Who knows? If their pitching can just be below average, it'd be nice, but it's unfortunately just horrendous constantly. They got Griffin Canning in AAA right now.
Yeah, well, this is why I think Ohtani has to pitch. Right? Brian Kenny can look at it from a big picture, but let's look at the Angels today. He's their best pitcher, so he has to pitch. Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. And they've had some contributions. David Fletcher is really swinging the bat good now. Max Stassi behind the plate, he's looking like a pretty good hidden catcher. So they're getting contributions. It's not completely the Ohtani show, even though we all love that. It's not completely that. But the Red Sox, okay, we mentioned them. Playing quite well. I wrote yesterday, I said the Rays and the Red Sox are kind of playing a game of let's battle for first until September, and let's see what happens. You know what? The Red Sox, at a time there, looked like they were pulling ahead. But I think it's going to be Red Sox-Rays for a bit here, and the Yankees and Blue Jays are going to have their own little game of let's see how much ground we can build up, and then in September we get serious with really catching them. But how do you look at the AL East right now?
Yeah, listen, I look at the AL East with the Red Sox. They're 2.5 up on the Rays right now. The Red Sox have shown so much to me. They went on another big win streak, getting 8 in a row. Maybe I'm being a homer here. Maybe it is what it is. I keep thinking through it, but I look at where the Red Sox are at right now, and I don't know how you can't see them as one of the best, candidates to go to the World Series in the AL. I think, the White Sox with Eloy Jimenez beginning a rehab assignment get right in that conversation, especially if Luis Robert comes back. I think the Astros are, as talented as any team in baseball, really. And while they don't have that frontline starter, that rotation 1 through 5 is so deep. And if they can add a closer, it'll go a long way. But look at where the Red Sox are at. They have arguably the most lethal lineup in all of baseball. Top 3 or 4 bullpen that likely will get some help, whether it's at the trade deadline or not. And then a starting rotation that's a little bit, on the lower end. It's not, I'd call it mediocre. It ranks in that like 18 to 22 range. But Chris Sale's coming back, and everything is pointing positively in that direction. Tanner Houck is, ramping back up and starting to look like himself. And he, even if he's not a starter for this team, will be huge out of the bullpen. Ryan Brazier is building his way back up. That's another middle relief arm there. You start to look around, it's like, wow, they have the depth. They have just about everything you're looking for. That doesn't include a Jarren Duran added into the mix or them, at the trade deadline, which Chaim Bloom, not that he's showing his hand, but he's made it clear they're going to at least bring something in here to kind of supplement them. So I think they're going to be the clear front runner. I think the Rays will be playing catch up. And I think the Blue Jays, before you know it, I love the bullpen moves ahead of the trade deadline, going after an Adam Simber and a Trevor Richards, which that doesn't fix their whole bullpen by no means, but it's been so depleted just to add some middle relief inning arms, and I expect them to do more before the deadline. I think they'll enter that conversation with the Rays and the Red Sox.
Yeah, the Blue Jays are adding Band-Aids. They needed to fix something in a hurry. I was going to ask you about Chris Sale, actually, before you mentioned him. And I want to know what the talk in Boston right now is about the return of Chris Sale. Is there a lot of anticipation? Are people really chomping at the bit here saying, when's Chris Sale pitching?
Yeah, legit everywhere. That's all you're seeing in terms of Red Sox. And, Chris Sale, people somehow have forgotten how special this guy really is. He's, one of the best pitchers of the last generation, the current generation still. He's not that old. He's really just right at that 30-ish mark. So I'm looking at Chris Sale, and, some people are a little worried. He's coming off Tommy John. He's not going to be 100%. We know that. But 80% of Chris Sale is still an ace to me, is still better than a majority of teams' number ones. So getting him back in the mix would be great. He's throwing 95 in the batting practice, the live BP sessions he kind of has. And upcoming, he's about to start a rehab assignment. They're saying they're really one bullpen away from deciding it. So we'll see. I'm super excited. Chaim Bloom has made it clear he's going to be in the starting rotation as well. So that's the kind of piece that could really launch this Red Sox team into, AL favorites.
So the Red Sox do have the 4th pick in the draft. So this is another storyline in Boston now. And this draft is getting real interesting now. Maybe let's say 2 months ago, it was all about the pitching, a lighter, rocker. Okay, what's going on here? It's getting in a place now, as we really approach it, where you can do a coin flip. And now we're looking at signing bonuses and the slots and how is that all going to play out? Who do you have going number 1? And then let's talk about the first handful of picks in the first round.
So, it's felt like a month ago, just about, let's be real, right? Let's go a year back when, post last year's draft, what people saw. Kumar Rocker was the clear number 1. Everyone saw it that way. I'd say around December, the conversation started to flip to Jordan Lawler going first overall. That seemed like the, consensus amongst just about everybody. As the high school season, people started to lean and, we saw Kumar Rocker kind of be great, but not as great as everyone, I think, anticipated, especially with Jack Leiter kind of, dominating next to him and being even better. But I have Marcelo Mayer, who has really risen up in the, last 5-6 months. A lot of comps to Corey Seager from the bat. You watch just him taking BP. It's beautiful. That swing looks just like Seager's, and he should stick at shortstop. And you look at it, people see him probably, while he may not be as great of an overall skill set as Jordan Lawler, that hit tool, anybody will fall in love watching it. And he fits the Pirates kind of timeline and where they're at. They can let him develop.
Yeah, originally I had him go into the Tigers at 3. And then things change, right? And then Henry Davis for a second there, we thought really could go to the Pirates at number 1. And now all of a sudden you got teams in the middle, like a Rangers, and then like the Red Sox at 4, where you're saying to yourself, okay, do we take the pitcher because we have an opportunity here to take a top of the end pitcher and a guy that's going to be an A-level prospect in our system? Or do we go with the position player? And I got a question for you. The Pirates have done a pretty good job over the last decade, I'd say, at developing pitching. They have. And does that benefit them in the sense of, yes, you take a pitcher, or do you go in the opposite direction and say, we're already good at developing pitching. Let's take a guy like Mayer. Let's get that middle of the infield guy to solidify our system.
I think where the Pirates are at right now, it's just what talent, they're not close to competing. We see it. Outside of Key Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, they got a couple nice pieces, but they're years away from getting there. And you look, who do you believe is going to give you the most value and turn into, an everyday player that can change it? Listen, pitching's great. We all know what an ace and everything can do, but to have, they don't even have a foundation of position players moving forward. Marcelo Mayer fits that narrative. He fits everything that they could ask for, and they don't have to rush him. Say they drafted Jack Leiter or Kumar Rocker, they'll probably be up in a year and a half, 2-ish years. Pirates 2 years from now aren't going to be competing. Let's just be real in that sense. I think you bring Mayer in and you hope he becomes a superstar. He becomes that next can't miss prospect. I understand why they're kind of going in that direction, which, I think Mayer going one really shakes up what many people had originally anticipated the first 5-ish picks being. I think the Rangers sit there now. Now they're moving off Lawler, who's the local kid. Looks like they're leaning on Jack Leiter, which breaks my heart. I've been pushing that Jack Leiter train. Red Sox fans, I'll be real. Out of, everything I've seen on Twitter, Red Sox fans hung up on Jack Leiter seems to be the most consistent thing that I'm seeing with the draft process and what people are talking about. And, most mocks have him going number 2, but there continues to be that little note in every mock draft. Leiter loves the Red Sox. The Red Sox love Leiter. Leiter's trying to price himself there. Will he be able to? I don't know. I think the Rangers don't care. I think they think their window is a lot closer than what people think. In 2 years, I think they believe they're going to be competing. That's what Fangraphs mock draft said. That's the inside kind of mindset. Don't agree with it, but Jack Leiter fits that plan. I think you look at number 3. It looks like Brady House is just about a lock at this point to go there. Had a great workout. We knew the Tigers were in love with them as well, or in love with him as well, which leaves the Red Sox. They don't get the guy they wanted, but there's other options. And I don't think it's going to be a Kumar Rocker. I lean Henry Davis.
Henry Davis out of Louisville, that would be a real interesting pick for the Red Sox. And you got to think about the shortstop depth all of a sudden in this draft. It's quite remarkable, actually. Top-heavy shortstops that you're going to have your choice of, really. And that's a premium position. And I think that when it comes to the top of this draft, we're looking at 3 premium positions: catcher, pitcher, shortstop.
No, you're not wrong. Listen, you're always going to look at shortstop and catcher because these are kind of premier positions where if you can hit the ball and do other things, people are going to jump on you. Your stock's high, but how often do you see a shortstop or a catcher get moved off of these positions, a year into their process? But I think when you look at these guys, Marcelo Mayer projects there. Jordan Lawler projects there. Henry Davis, you're getting Buster Posey comps. We see how much of a cannon he has behind the plate. They look like they should stick. And when you look at someone like Henry Davis and his bat could play anywhere. He was the best college baseball player this year from a position player standpoint. So listen, if you're a Red Sox fan and you're heartbroken over Jack Leiter, I'll be sad too. But Henry Davis is no number 2. This is a 1B, someone who you should be extremely excited about, especially for a Red Sox system who, catching-wise, they're very thin. It's really nothing. You got a Connor Wong who, hopefully he's a utility kind of backup guy who can play catcher there. And, he's had some moments since he was joined the Red Sox, where he showed a little bit, but he was hitting 148 at AAA before he got called up. They got Ronaldo Hernandez, who came over from the Rays, who he's not a big league catcher. You can tell already. So Henry Davis would be a great 1B, but the heart wants Jack Leiter, but we'll accept what it is.
Jack Leiter is kind of like that sexy pick, right? He's got the name. He's got this. He's got that. But you're right. There's nothing to be disappointed about if Henry Davis is, in fact, the guy to go to Boston.
It's just Jack Leiter's the most famous player in college baseball right now. That's it, and you look at Jack Leiter, we see the hype videos and the different stuff, and he wants to come to Boston. It's feels like a match made in heaven, but unfortunately, when you're those last couple starts from Tanner Houck at the end of last year, man, they will hurt. They will hurt for a long time because they'll probably be what determines, the Red Sox not getting him if he doesn't land. But I still say, listen, those little notes in these mock drafts are not nothing. If people still keep floating that connection, that means there's something out there. And the Rangers, they could go in so many directions. If they go Lawler, who would be shocked? It's a local guy who they were attached to a ton early in the process. So we'll see, you know?
Well, Lawler has always kind of been like that guy where it's, let's go back 2 months again, because I think it's interesting. It was Leiter, number one to the Pirates, and then it was Lawler because he's the local guy. And you see like Derek Jeter comps all of a sudden, and it's like, well, the Rangers got to take a guy like that. Guy out of Texas, you just have to. But you know what? Things change fast, right? And you talk about guys moving off positions. Like, I'll give you one right now. Ryan Mountcastle with the Orioles, shortstop. That's how he was brought up in the system originally. And then he went to third base. And then he went to first base. And then he had to go to the outfield last year when he came up for the first time. So, yeah, things change. Things will change again, I'm sure, within a week. But we are getting to that point where it's kind of like, okay, let's project things. And right now you got Henry Davis at 4 to the Red Sox.
I do. And I think the other thing is the MLB draft is not like the NFL draft. And even the NFL draft had this a little bit this year where no one knew what the 49ers were doing. And that was such a weird place for a lot of people to be because, in the NFL draft, for example, you usually know, you have an idea of what's going to happen the first 4 or 5 picks, a good feeling. The MLB draft is always, there's a couple surprises. There's a couple weird things going on. The mocks, even early picks usually kind of fall off. You see a team go under slot for a guy. It's just a different system. And that would not surprise me here. You look at these teams, especially, the Rangers and the Tigers, maybe they go for an approach where, I don't think the Rangers will lean that way, but the Tigers, do they want to keep spreading out this draft capital and kind of going that way about it? I think the Orioles will go under slot at number 5, for example. The Red Sox have been talked about potentially with Ford going under slot there. So we'll see. There's so many variables right now, but right now, look for the mock drafts that are coming out because a lot of them, they're a little different, each one. And you kind of see that wiggle room where, wow, one guy, moves up, Lawler jumps into that 1, 2, 3 again. Boom. Jack Leiter could easily be on the Red Sox.
So just for reference, the latest Fangraphs mock draft had both Jordan Lawler and Kumar Rocker really drop in here, 6 and 7 respectively. So that's a real different shift from what we've talked about in the past. So just something to keep in mind.
It was Lawler 6 to the Diamondbacks and a Rocker 7 to the Royals.
Yes.
Like, who would have thought that even a month and a half ago? Right. Nobody.
Right.
But, that's where we are at this point, and it shows how much things shake up. And I still think Kumar Rocker, I feel bad. He's getting a little bit of a hard draw here. He had a great season. He wasn't Jack Leiter. And I think there's some concerns about whether the stuff will be consistent enough or how the body will take shape. But ending up with Kumar Rocker is no disappointment either. Jordan Lawler, I'm a little iffy. These all-around prospects, he's getting compared to Bobby Witt Jr. in a lot of ways. I like Bobby Witt Jr. a lot more. I think Lawler, and he's a little older for a high school kind of prep shortstop. So we'll see. There's so much going on right now, but I'm curious to see how it plays out. But I think it's going to be one of the more fun MLB drafts in recent years.
And I'll state the obvious here, but there's a lot more variables when you're taking a pitcher than a position player. There's just a lot more question marks, I think, naturally. Also, Jackson Jobe, another high school kid at Oklahoma, and he's also a guy who's gotten some attention here. He should be a top 10 pick. You got the Angels in the mix. You got the Rockies picking at 8. And, of course, we've talked about the Royals and D-backs before that. So the draft is going to be real interesting. It's going to be a big topic of conversation when we're on the show next week. Yes, it's exciting. I know there's a lot of people in the baseball community. This is their day. This is their week. That's all they love. They love the MLB draft. So I can't wait either. It's going to be a good one. Now, final thoughts on the draft before we move on.
Overall, just get ready for the craziness. I think there's going to be those curveballs in there. And if the Red Sox get really creative, they somehow go under slot at 4, don't freak out. Chaim Bloom knows what he's doing. And I'll continue to put the points down. Look, Nick York dominating right now in low A, showing why the Red Sox, who were clowned for taking him originally, knew what they were doing. And he's playing in a league that's a year older than him, and it's kind of clicking. So these scouting departments, they know way more than people realize, especially with how weird things have been with COVID over the last 2 years. They have their own favorites. They have their own mocks. And if you see an off the board pick, it's fair to criticize, don't get me wrong. But if I'm looking at the Red Sox, I'd be very careful if you start criticizing those picks because they know what they're looking for.
Now, of course, I'm not in the market, the Boston market. I don't know the temperature exactly, but it sounds to me like all the people who don't like Heim Bloom are not going to have the final laugh here, and it will be like you having the final laugh. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we're going in that direction.
Listen, there's so many people who've tried to crap on Heim Bloom or say he doesn't know what he's doing. He's hit so many times. And listen, has he had a few misses? 100%. But everybody does. No one hits on every signing. Yeah, he missed on Garrett Richards. Congrats. But you name 9 other things he's done right. And you look at Nick York. This is a guy who people talked about. Vandy's Corbin had talked about it, their coach. He thought he was the best high school bat on the West Coast. He's doing it. Trust in the process. Trust in what Heim Bloom's doing. And if he gets creative, don't shy away, because last year it led to, landing Blaze Jordan on top of everything.
There you go. Now, how about this? The NL Central. We got polar opposites going on. We got the Brewers on one end of the spectrum and then the Cubs on the other end of the spectrum. And what in the world is going on at the Cubs? They throw a combined no-hitter against the Dodgers. I know they win yesterday. We're recording this on Thursday, July 8th, so they did win yesterday. But before that, they'd lost 11 in a row. What in the world is going on? They look like sellers now at the deadline. And the Brewers, total control. The Willy Adames trade looks great. And they made some moves here and there. They just got Rowdy Tellez, which you might be happy about. He won't play in Fenway that much.
That was the first thing that went through my head when I saw that trade. And even this year, with how bad his year has been, he had a couple hits against the Red Sox when they came to Boston. But no, listen, with the Cubs, they had that about a week and a half ago, that stretch where everyone was like, oh my God, the Cubs are pushing. Imagine if they hadn't dealt Yu Darvish over the winter. The Cubs are going to have such a hard time at the deadline. No, it's regression to the mean. They're a 500 ball club. And while they're better than I think a lot of people realize, and I'll give them credit for that as well, they're not a playoff team. They're not a World Series team. I think they have a 5.2% chance to make the playoffs according to Fangraphs right now. That tells you what you need to know. And even if they were, in a slightly better position, don't be stupid. Jed Hoyer, do not be dumb. You got to deal these pieces. This team is not going anywhere. Don't let them fool you. There's not many times you have this many assets in a Chris Bryant, a Javier Baez, a Craig Kimbrell that you can kind of shelve off and really rebuild your farm system. So they better take advantage of it. I think people will just get on that hype train, and I didn't really understand it. It didn't make sense. But the Brewers, they're the real deal. You have a 1, 2, 3 of Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns, and Freddie Peralta, who's another all-star snub, by the way. As lethal as a 1, 2, 3 you're going to see. You mentioned Willy Adames. Wow. What a trade that has turned out to be. And, I'm not trying to take a victory lap here, but I think me and you both said that when we were talking about the trade initially. This kind of move, you get him. You looked at Willy Adames' road splits. He's gotten out of Tropicana, and like he said, it all clicked from there. He said the lights in Tropicana made it hard for him to see, and he couldn't hit. All right, listen, I'm not going to doubt what he's saying anymore because we're seeing it happen in front of us. And think about it. They haven't had Lorenzo Cain most of the year. Colton Wong's been banged up. They lost Travis Shaw. Christian Yelich is, let's be real, he's pre-MVP Christian Yelich at this point. Still, posting really good numbers, getting on at a 400 OBP. But this is a team that hasn't even really hit their stride yet.
Yep, and we talked about Jackie Bradley Jr. Not good. Not good this year.
He blows.
Yeah, not there you go. So you're not a fan of his. The thing is that, the Brewers, we knew they had the pitching. So we said in a division like this, wide open, it can benefit them. They can do something. And the Cardinals really went through a tough stretch. So this is it for the Brewers, right? And the Cubs, Now I want to go back to the Cubs. Are you suggesting that they should trade everyone? I'm talking about the guys who are pending free agents.
Listen, if you want to lock on to one guy to kind of hold on to your rebuild, while you figure these things out, because they're not so far away that you can't see it. But let's be real. Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Craig Kimbrell, what are we doing? Like, you got to make these decisions. This is hard. It's not easy, especially considering, Baez, Bryant, and Rizzo. We know that World Series, what it meant to Chicago at that time, but you could get a ton for Chris Bryant right now. Javier Baez is, while the numbers aren't great, he's still been an above average hitter this year. He's been better than what, he was the previous years. And Anthony Rizzo, people will take him on. He seems like the ideal kind of, you're looking for a veteran first baseman who can push you over the top. He may not be the Anthony Rizzo of his prime, but he's still a really good player. And Craig Kimbrell's going to be the best reliever on the market. Sell it all. Do you really want to put yourself in a position where you can compete for this division, in 2 years maybe, and have a great farm system? This is how you do it.
Reminds me of like Lance Berkman when he was kind of like a trade chip back then. And he can put you over the top, a veteran first baseman. Now, let me flip it around on you, though. Let's say that the season ends. okay? And the Cubs actually do re-sign some of these guys. Rizzo comes back, Bryant comes back. No trades were made. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with the Cubs continuing in this direction? It's not like Chris Bryant is that old.
If you know you can lock one of these guys up, all right. If you can get Chris Bryant to stay here, perfect, right? If he's willing to get lock into a contract, Javier Baez, and you like that contract, I get it. Craig Kimbrell, you're not competing for a World Series next year. He has a pretty financially team-friendly option for next year. He's got to go. Sell him off. That bullpen is already failing, as we've seen. They were so great to begin the year, too, but it was only going to go so far carrying a lackluster pitching staff. Sell these pieces. You hold on to too many, you're going to sit there and regret it and be like, all right, we hung on for too long. And I think, you look at somewhat like what the Reds did where they understood, listen, we still have a good team, but, we kind of got to do a little bit of both here of moving forward and also building for the future. I think that's a fair mindset with the Cubs, but if they try to hold on to everything, this is going to blow up all in their face.
Yeah, you got to think that they wouldn't do that. I mean, there's times when executives kind of get over their heads and say, no, 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 this is the team. I think it's going to be a tough pill to swallow for Cubs fans, and I'll tell you why. I mean, they already went through the whole process. I'm talking pre-2015, okay, when it was, we're building it down. This is going to be a slow grind, and we're going to get to the point where we're competitive every year. And they have had that era, but it just didn't feel long enough, right? They have the World Series, and because they got the World Series, okay, that's it. People got to understand that's good enough. But yeah, you still were in the mix in 2017, and we know since then it's kind of been hit or miss with the Cubs, and they've lost in a wild card game since then, and it just didn't feel long enough, this era of winning.
For a rebuild that took so long, well, flags fly forever. They got the one, and for a team that was ending a curse like they did, it does. It's a W. They got it. They made it. But still, you can't help but say they didn't at least make it to another one. You know what I mean? Like we didn't. There were down years like you said, that wild card year, regular seasons where they were just they never were considered the best team in baseball. They couldn't hit that full stride. There was no pure dominance that you'd expect from such a talented young core. And that's the tough part. But what are you going to do? The time is come and gone, hoping and wishing that somehow you can get back to it. It's not realistic here. So you swallow the pill, you get over it so that you can be a competitive baseball team in 2 years instead of 5 years.
Yeah, they've had tough losses too. In 2018, that wild card game against Colorado, I mean, they really had everything in control entering September, and it all fell apart. So there's been some tough years, but you do say they have that one World Series, and that's a huge W, a huge one. That was probably the Game 7 against the Indians. It's probably the game of our generation, right?
I agree, yeah.
So that they have, and that should be enough, But me and you are probably going to look at it saying, really, that's it? About 4 years of contending? It just doesn't feel enough, but we'll see. They're an intriguing team. Now, before we wrap up, Jacob deGrom is an all-star, but he's not going to pitch in the game. Do you have a problem with that?
No, and I know maybe a lot of people think that's stupid. Buster Olney really put together, he was pretty laid it on thick on him saying, you're one of the faces of the game. You should be there. It's your responsibility. Listen, he's pitched in multiple all-star games already. If he was fully healthy, I'd get the argument. I'd be like, all right, this is a guy, he's been on the IL this year. He's come out of multiple starts, had multiple nagging injuries. This time off, is it going to make a huge difference? Probably not. But just to get a break and let that arm heal up in any way, I bet the Mets are happy. Mets fans should be happy. And with the way their lineup is produced this year, you're going to need Jacob deGrom to be as great as he's been all year if you want to, go where you want to go.
Okay, I look at the All-Star game from a historical perspective, right? All I really care about, in all honesty, is that I see Jacob deGrom's name and All-Star 2021. Okay, when I look back at it 30 years from now, I can say that, right? You look at Roger Clemens. He pitched in the 86 All-Star game when he was with the Red Sox, a classic All-Star game appearance. And, that's history, right? You can look back at it. But this isn't 1986 anymore in the sense that, interleague play happens all the time. The All-Star game used to be one of the showcases to see a National League pitcher go up against an American League hitter, that and the World Series. Well, it's not the case anymore, right? So It doesn't bother me anymore if guys aren't going to the All-Star game. I just care that it says on their resume they were on the roster, and that's it. And that's how I'm looking at it.
I'm right there with you. Listen, for how many years, and I'm not trying to call anybody out, but Manny Ramirez was known for, a week before the All-Star game. Oh, the hamstring. I can feel my hamstring a little bit. Plenty of veterans have taken these off for years. Derek Jeter is last year. These were things, let's be real. It's not like it was back in the day where you'd never see, if you were a Red Sox fan, you'd never see that star on the Dodgers or the Braves, say it's the 90s, you never get to see John Smoltz do his thing. No, everyone, MLB TV, Twitter, you see these clips. It's not like it once was. And it's okay. The All-Star game still is important. Don't get me wrong, but you guys get to see them shine time in and time out. Your team runs into them with the new, interleague play over the last few years. So, no, heal up, please. I'd rather have a healthy Jacob deGrom that dominates baseball and can set all-time records this year than someone who throws 13 pitches in an all-star game.
Well, that's the thing, right? If there wasn't interleague play or to the extent that we have today, I would have said I'm disappointed because I'd love to see deGrom go up against Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in a matchup just for an at-bat, right? But that's not the case anymore, right? So it's all good. He's on the roster. He's just not traveling there, I guess. He's going to spend time with his family. That's nice. So let's not get worked up about it. Okay, this isn't 1986 anymore. That All-Star game in Houston, a classic, right? And it was Clemens, right? And it was a big deal for National League hitters to face Roger Clemens, right? The rookie sensation.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Even you go back to 99 and Pedro and, Larry Walker and everything that happened at that time, great stuff. You know what I mean? Back then you understood why, because it was like fantasy land. Now, the All-Star game is great. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy it, but it doesn't feel like Fantasyland. It feels like an All-Star game. you know what I mean? It is what it is. And that's just something that has changed with the game, but I'll be able to watch these guys, on a nightly basis over seeing them one time in an exhibition game.
That is The Squeeze. My name is Logan Lockhart. That is Tyler Milliken. It's presented by Primetime Sports Talk. We do it every week, and we are back post-holiday. Return to The Squeeze. All-Star game coming up, MLB draft coming up, and then the trade deadline. What a month of July. We're going to be right here with The Squeeze. Tyler Milliken, final words.
Fingers crossed for Jack Leiter.
It seems like a match made in heaven here. The fans want it. Leiter apparently wants it. So let's see how that plays out. I think we're going to talk one more time before the draft actually happens. So we'll get to our final thoughts. I think we will.
Well, we're this Sunday? We got the 11th? So I don't think we will. I think next episode we'll be talking MLB draft.
So we'll recap the draft next episode. Okay, well, fingers crossed then for Jack Leiter to the Red Sox, even though I would like to see him wink, wink, nudge, nudge with the Rangers. That kind of makes me excited. But
end this episode. Let's go, Logan.
End of the episode. That was episode 12. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Watch on YouTube, Primetime Sports Talk. That's who it's presented by. And until next week, here we are, signing off.